Well, thank you for coming. And this is going to, you're going to enjoy this, man, because I know, because I spent hours in multiple airport lounges listening to these stories, man, and it's the best. So right now, without further ado, we're going to introduce to you a living, breathing, witness and participant in the history of American rhythm and blues, rock and roll, and African culture, Mr. Derrick Martin, a.k.a. D-Mar. Come on, D-Mar. I just want to make sure you got that correct. So, D-Mar, let me hear you say D-Mar. D-Mar. All right.
Let's hear it for Rick Aston, y'all. Okay, so when I got here, they pulled out the screen and all the stuff, and I was like, man, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna be talking. And kind of looked at me, and so I want you to, whatever you were expecting, we're just having a fireside chat. Is that cool? So, as Rick said, for those that don't know, my name is Derrick D-Mar Martin. I am a native of Jackson, Mississippi. And I had the blessing, luck, honor, and privilege to be in the employ of Little Richard for about 17 years. And what we'll do today, in the short space of time we have, I'll talk you through how it happened, how amazing it was, how weird and strange it was. So, I was 23 years old, it's 1995. I'm a junior at Jackson State University, majoring in music, which at the time was a double major in music and secondary education. And I was emphasis on jazz, whole thing. So I'm gigging around, playing Chitlin Circuit, learning how to do all these things you see us do now. I was working with this lady named Linda Jacobs. Linda was managing a band I was in, and she was also managing the local music festival called Jubilee Jam. Little Richard had appeared at this festival maybe the year prior, and he and Linda became friends. So he expressed to Linda, he's like, Linda, I'd like to hire a young black drummer to add to my band. Because if you don't know, years ago, Richard had a huge band with 2 drummers, 2 bass players, 2 everything. And I'll tell you why later. But as time went on, he had gone down, he was one drummer. So Linda calls me and said, hey, Little Richard is looking for a drummer. I'm like, who? Like, the Little Richard? She's like, yeah. Call this number and, see what it's about. So I get the number. Now, I'm expecting to talk to a representative, right? My country boy, 23-year-old self, calls this number and said, hello. It's like, hello, hey baby, how you doing? Hello? Yeah, baby, I said, how you doing? Can you hear me? I said, I was calling, is Little Richard. You got me, baby, this is me. And I'm like, oh my God, it's like, yeah, well, Linda told me to call you about, you play drums. Oh boy, I heard you got a good beat. I heard you got a good beat. He said, well, do you know my songs? You know Long Tall Salad and Tutti Frutti? And I was like, well, yes, sir. He said, do you have those records? I was like, well, I don't have them here, but there's a record store down the street. I'll tell you what, go down there and get the specialty, hits. get that and then call me back. So I hang up the phone. Hey, and I'm telling you, I'm not adding anything to this. I'm just telling you the truth. I get in the, well, was I driving now? I was driving, but I didn't own a car. I got in my mom's car, I drove to the store, got the records, so I called him back. Okay, I got the records. Oh, can you play that stuff, baby? I'm like, yes, sir. Well, all right. I'm gonna call you back. I was like, okay. I was like, why are you gonna call me back? I'm gonna let you know when you gonna come out here. Come out here? He's like, yeah, I'm gonna bring you to LA. So he calls me back the next day, like a Tuesday. He's like, okay, baby, you're gonna leave Thursday morning on Delta Airlines, coming to LA. And I'm gonna pick you up. Just look for the limo. So, keep in mind, up to this point, I'm in college. I'm a student by day at the university, and I'm a student by night on the chitlin circuit in the jump joints. So, the cardinal sin at school is you do not leave school for a gig. It was preached to us weekly. Because a lot of the guys I work with, they played with Bobby Bland and Johnny Taylor and all this stuff. No, you don't leave school. So I go to school with my professors, and I was like, I already know what they're gonna say. I just like, if I can just get like some time to I don't wanna lose my class credit. It's my junior year. I'm like, right there. And I go and I meet with all my professors, like, hey, look, Little Richard calls, and he wants me to audition. And my one professor, Dr. Holly, he always talks, he's like, some of these individuals, and I said this to him, and he said, oh, look, what? He called me Martin. Martin, wait, don't you leave. He goes and rounds up all of my professors. We sit in the room, and their tone changed. They said, no. This, you have to go do. And my one, Dr. Thomas, the jazz instructor, he's like, hey, baby, just make sure you got a round trip ticket. So that happens, of course, I tell my mom, she's all of a sudden lady, she's like, I don't know about this, Derrick. Those, Hollywood types, and then you're Little Richard. You be careful, baby. So I go, I fly to the airport Thursday, I get to LA. Like he said, I get to baggage claim, and his son Danny, is the adopted son Danny Jones, which later became my roommate and like my best friend to this day. Danny's like, oh, you Derrick? Oh, yeah, man, come outside. And I was like, yeah. And he pulls up in a white stretch limo with Little Richard written on the side. I'm not making this up. And the door opens, the cologne meets me. He stands, he said, oh, baby, oh boy, you was a good looking piece of leather. And he gets out the car. And they called him Little Richard, but he was not a little man at all. He gets out the car and I'm looking up, like, oh, he said, oh, baby, oh yeah, all right, come on. He said, come here, and give me a hug. So we get in. So I'm there for like 2 weeks. I don't touch a pair of drumsticks. I haven't seen the drum. I'm like, okay, what's going on? I'm with him every day. We're going around just doing stuff. He's letting me see how much people love him. And he's telling me, but what I did not realize is that he was checking me out. Because what I found out later was because I was like, he could get anybody in the world to do this gig. Why am I here? But we're playing, we're going around. So, we went to dinner. We had tons of conversations about my life, he was telling me about, of course he talked about himself a lot. But I mean, I'm just literally pinching myself every second because I'm in a limo with him. I'm sitting there, we're just talking, and he says, I was like, man, I'm like, bro, what you? He's taking me around Hollywood. He was Seventh-day Adventist. So sundown Friday, sundown Saturday, Sabbath, took me to church with him. And then after church, we would drive down Hollywood Boulevard and pass out books, which was his, it was Ellen G. White's Steps to Christ, but it was a book that he, had his picture in, and he would pass it out to homeless people and people on the street. And so I'm in the thing, and I'm like, yo, this is a thing? Like, and we went to all the soul food restaurants and the whole thing. So after about 2 weeks, he's like, all right, we're gonna go to SIR and we're gonna feed you play. So we finally go to, and SIR is like it's a rehearsal space place. They had time allotted for us. So of course, in great Little Richard fashion, we get there late. So we miss our time. And again, Little Richard's a genius in more ways than one. Rick Estrin is big on the psychologicals, understanding the psychologicals of this business. And Little Richard was one of those kings of the psychologicals. And so we leave there, I'm thinking, oh, okay, well, cool, I can relax. The audition space is over. So we meet up with guitarist Roy Gaines. You guys know Roy Gaines? Remember Roy's brother, Grady Gaines, played sax with Richard in the original Upsetters. So we meet Roy Gaines, and Roy and Richard are talking. Like, keep in mind, like, I'm 23 years old, from the South, first time in LA, first time in Hollywood, definitely first time around anybody like Little Richard. So we meet Mr. Gaines. Mr. Gaines has a club on Crenshaw in South Central LA. So now I'm not realizing that this is about to be my real audition. So we go to the club. Charles Glenn, Richard's bass player at the time, was with us. But Charles showed up, and I should have known then. Like, bass player just appears. Like, but we go into this club. It's quintessential juke joint, honky tonk. We go in, honky tonk piano, all out of tune, but great sounding. The worst drum set I've ever seen in my life. But it's a juke joint. So we go in there, we sit down. We're there for like 3 hours. Richard sits down and just starts to play. But he doesn't play Little Richard style rock and roll. He just starts playing the blues. And then Roy grabs his guitar, and they're telling stories. Charles plugs up his bass. Hey, okay, I'll play. So I'm totally disarmed, which was his psychological. I'm just being myself. So we're playing, and we're grooving, and they're telling stories, and they're saying stuff, and he was like, oh man, you don't know nothing about that. Oh yes I do, man. I'm from Mississippi. Well, let me show you. I'm gonna break it. I'm just acting a fool, just clowning. And so after about 2-3 hours of this, literally, we just played blues, groove, and Richard's like, oh, okay. All right, y'all, I've heard enough. You all right, son? You got the gig. We open for the Temptations next week in Serena's. Again, I'm not making any of this up. So I'm like, what? So I look at the bass player, Charles, I'm like, hey man, he's like, hey bro, welcome to the band. I was like, no, wait. I was like, but Mr. Richard, baby, just call me Richard. Oh, Richard, what? We didn't play any of your music. What do you mean I got the gig? He's like, you got a good foot, a good backbeat, you say yes sir, no sir, and you love your mama. I'll teach you the rest. And that was the beginning of a roller coaster ride. No, it was literally the next level of my education. So from there, we go, and at the time, Travis Womack was playing guitar. Anybody know Travis Womack from Muscle Shoals? Amazing guitarist, songwriter. And his son, Monkey Womack, was playing drums in the band already. So there was no rehearsal. I just, hey, it's a new guy. I just show up on the gig. Now listen to all the records, and you know, I'm gonna tell you a secret. We gotta keep it in this room. I am really a nerd. Now, don't let anybody else know that, because I gotta be cool. But no. So I learned all of Richard's songs. I studied everything I could find, all the Earl Palmer grooves, the whole nine, because I'm like, I don't know what he's gonna pull from, whatever. So literally, from the time I went home to that first gig, I had on headphones. When I was in school, even in class, I was sitting there, Tutti Frutti in my ear. So we get to the gig, and initially the gig was cool because Monkey was kind of leading out, and I was kind of following him. So we get to, I'm still learning. 1995, 23 years old, first time in LA, first time being around Little Richard. I get this gig. Then we get a call that we're going to go to London for an historic event. Now, I'm still learning the show. We're going to go do a show in Birmingham at the NEA, and I think we did Wembley. It's the first time that Little Richard, Chuck Berry, Fats Domino, and Jerry Lee Lewis were on the same show. So Richard is like, oh, baby, do you have your passport? Like, no, sir. He's like, you gotta go get your passport. You know, we're a passport band, you know. I go, I get my passport. Now, all this is going on. So, as we are preparing for this, there's some inner turmoil within the band. It turns out that Travis figures, hey, this is a pretty big deal. We should get paid more for this. Now, keep in mind, I will say, Little Richard was very generous. So much so, his agent said William Morris hated him for it. The entire time I was in the band, the agent was like, you pay your band too much. But Richard believed in taking care of his musicians. He paid us well. And unlike, I think James Brown and most people would pay weekly, Richard paid us nightly. And so when they asked for more money, he was, you already make great money. Like so I'm not knowing that this is going on. So they were like, well, okay, we'll say we're gonna quit because you can't make this gig without us, and this new guy doesn't know blah, 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 blah. So yeah, talking about being in the hot seat. And let me explain to you what I mean by hot seat. Now, you see this seat right here? This is always the hot seat. And the reason so is because in a band, anything that goes wrong is always the drummer's fault. Now, we're on this, and the thing about the gig with Richard is, keep in mind, like, there's no rehearsal. Nobody's told me anything. Nobody's told me what the cues are. I've been playing with Monkey. Monkey starts, I follow. Now, okay. One gig, we're there, we do Keep a Knockin'. You guys hit the Keep a Knockin'? Yeah. That was weak. Are you guys hit the Keep a Knockin'? Yeah. Okay. So, Monkey usually starts it off, and Richard's like, Derrick, baby, let me hear you start off Keep a Knockin'. Oh boy. And I was like, well, Richard, you want me to start it off like Monkey, or you want me to play it like Earl Palmer? He stands up. What do you know about Earl Palmer? I'm like, well, I know all Earl Palmers. Well, let me hear you playing like Earl Palmer. And I was like, that's the Earl Palmer intro. You know, also Led Zeppelin used that as well. You know, it was Led Zeppelin first. He got it. So, and the thing that Richard would do, so that song had a particular intro, but one of my first of many embarrassing moments on stage with Little Richard. Monkey's gone, and we would do All Around the World. And the way he started All Around the World was, he'd just say, all around the world, doom, 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 doom. That's the cue. And when he says all around the world, I'm supposed to go, all around the world. But no one told me that. So we're at this festival, thousands of people. He says, all around the world. The whole band turns and looks at me. I look at them. And Richard said, oh boy, yes, going around the world. Oh, okay, all right. He looks at me, evil eye, I still don't know. All around the world. So Wayne Chaney, trumpet player, stage manager, production manager, comes over. He gives me the sign, he explains what it is. I was like, oh. And Richard says, all around the world. So, okay, I'm learning all these things in real time. I didn't know. So, that goes on, and we go to all the other tunes. I'm figuring out, okay, he does Good Golly Miss Molly. He plays the intro. But what I had to figure out was, he plays the intro at one tempo, but he wants the song faster. So when he starts the song off, I originally came in at the tempo that he set, and then he's giving me this, like Alabama Mike got the same thing. And I'm like, what? And then I realized, so he go, boo-doo-bee, boo-dee-ba, boo-doo-bee, doo-bee-doo-da, bee-bee-doo-bee-dee, doo-dee-dee, boo-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo, doing that down-dee-da-dee-doo-dee-da, I gotta push it there, and not, he's the good guy. But again, no one ever told me this. And I get yelled at, I get looks, and I go home, and everybody in the band would call me and tell me their version of how I'm supposed to play the gig. Basically, nah, baby, see what you gotta do is you gotta lean into this, and then Saturday, nah, man, what you gotta do is play it this way, because what Richard did it like, and I have no idea. And like, what is it, like Lucille, same thing, like, doing he do that, and it's just, and now, keep it in mind, I'm playing that groove like that now, but when we did like, the original version of Tutti Frutti, if you remember, it was like, it was a swing beat. Remember, when they first did that record, it was before he talked Earl Palmer into using the train beat to drive it. But even with Tutti Frutti, all the cue was wop bop loop bop bop bam boom. That's all I got. And see what else? Oh, like Ready Teddy, ready set go man go. That's all I got. And again, no one is telling me anything. And it's like Miss Ann, he just say, oh, man. He never counted off anything. It's just, so I'm figuring all this out. Now, keep in mind I said I'm a nerd. So when we got to London, I decided to try to explain to Richard, hey man, now keep in mind, this is the gig, the whole like all around the world thing happens, is the gig, the last gig right before we go to London. And the whole band's like, man, I don't know if this kid's gonna make it. Like, you know, and you know, I'm all statuesque now. But then I was like, maybe 110 pounds. little rail. Like, I'm figuring all this out. I'm trying to figure out how to play and drive this massive band, and I don't know the cues. I know the music, but I don't know, and nobody's told me. So I said, Richard, look, man, you gotta help me out. You just gotta tell me. So we stay at the Mayfair Hotel in London, and in Richard's suite is a baby grand piano. Now this is one of the memories I will cherish for life. Because of the humanity and the fact that I am a nerd, I went to his room. Shut up. No, I went to his room and he has a baby grand piano. He said, all right, come on, baby. Now you can ask me anything you want to ask. Like, with the song. So I got drumsticks and a pillow. And for the better part of a night, he played piano and I went through every song I could think of and asked, okay, how does this? Now the beautiful thing was, like, nothing with Richard is without a story. And as a nerd, I am soaking it all up. Because we talk to the first, well, you know, when I was doing this, you know, Dr. John didn't like me. He said I was sissy. And I'm like, what? Dr. John? Yeah, you call me, I call him Matt. You know, so he has all these stories, but in that night, that gave me the foundation of how to play the gig, how to read him. And one of the things I learned, I learned it from the Chitlin circuit, but really with Richard, I had to read his body. Because he would play left hand, he was really playing drums. Because he would play straight in the left hand, and he would swing in the right hand. All this against the left hand. And whenever the tempo was right, he could play eighth notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. But if it was too fast, he would play quarter notes, 2, and I would know, because he wouldn't communicate. I just had to figure out, whenever he's doing that, it's too fast. Because we would play all these songs, but every night, even though we played, and Daryl can attest to this, even with Chuck Berry, you would play the same songs, sometimes night after night, but they were never the same. Because originally it depended on what kind of day he had. Like, okay, he might want it really fast today, or he might want it not so fast, and you just had to watch. And so that was the beginning of this huge ride in the education. And I also learned, he asked me, he said, have you read my book? Quasar? I was like, no, sir. And he looked at me, I better get the book. So, as a nerd, I read the book. Nobody else in the band read the book. But I read the book, and it gave me a lot of great insight into how to play with him and for him. And that's one of the things that I learned from him. I learned before, but over those years, and I still carry that to this day. It's like I learned that music is about humanity. And as a drummer, like, I'm not playing for you, I'm playing with you. And I can't really play with you if I don't know you. But I have to know what you like, what you dislike. Not just music. If you don't like wheat toast, if you don't like this, whatever, all of that is information. And that's what I learned from Richard, and there was tons of information all the time. Now, here's another funny story. I'm buying my house, we're moving through the process. Oh, let me tell you how the triumphant ending to the London gig first. We do the gig. After that night session, I'm armed with all this stuff. We go out. The shows go off great. I get written up in the paper. They say, we welcome Little Richard's new drummer, and they spoke all these great things about me. I was like, wow. And Richard told me, he was like, you know what? You bailed me out of a spot. He said that this gig is yours as long as you want it. And that went on, for 17 years, and man, a psychological ride. Because there was always mind tricks. I always tell people this, what I learned about the Little Richard kid. He may not always be right, but he was never wrong. Get it? We'd be on stage playing. If he dropped a beat and went one way, the bass players would yell at me after the gig, and I would say, look, I'm always going with him. No matter what happens, I'm going with him. And, so there would be those times. So, as I said, everybody's calling me, telling me how to play the gig and how whatever. It took me about 5 years to really own the gig for myself. I've been talking to great, amazing drummers on this cruise. And one of the things I say that, it's philosophical. For me, it's like, it's not about, because we can all play to some degree, but it's the mental thing. Like, I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm trying to be what he wants me to be. I'm trying to be what he wants me to be. And at some point, I was like, all I can do is be myself and play this music the way I feel it. And the one gig, we were sound check. We're playing Lucille, and I've been trying to play it like Monkey, with Monkey's Groove and the whole thing. But when Richard plays that, I'm like, man, that's funky, And for me, I'm hearing like, Earl Palmer. Train coming down the track, right? And I just, put a little George Clinton one on it. And Richard's like, oh man. What is that? He stops the band and he stands up. What is that? Derrick, what is that? So everybody's looking at me like, oh, you did it now. You about to get fired. And he was like, that's funky, baby. Let's pick it up a little bit. Let me in. And he goes back. So then I'm, okay, that's the way I feel it. He's like, okay, well, let's do this one. He goes into Tutti Frutti and two things. He's like, you know what? Just do that. Do that. I like that. That's funky, man. Then I realized, oh, I can interpret this the way I hear it and the way I feel it. And that was that beginning of me opening my mind to, okay, well, I'm validated at this point. I'm good. I belong here. I'm here because I belong here. And that was... And I mean, along that ride, there's tons, and I could go on tons and tons of lessons, because we did, like learning to do, I think we've done Jay Leno, we did Jay Leno at least 3 times. And one of the times was the only time, and you can look this up on YouTube, the only time that Chuck and Little Richard have ever been on the Tonight Show together, I was blessed enough to be on drums. Now, the funny thing, and Derrick can attest to this, is like watching Little Richard and Chuck, like, they're like these titans, and Richard would be like, they'd be all kind in the dressing room, and like, yeah, oh baby, oh, it's so good to see you, Chuck, oh baby, come here, baby, and he's like, oh boy, Chuck is rich, man, Chuck, Chuck don't mess with nobody about his money. So as soon as Chuck leaves, he looks around, y'all come in, the whole band come around, he's like, now we at war tonight, baby. Drummers, I want you to keep that beat. Now guitar, I want you to saturate this room with that Chuck Berry riff all night. So when he gets up there won't be nothing new for him to do. I was like, oh wow, man, this is for real. But when he and Chuck were on shows together, that's when you got the best of both of them, because Chuck didn't mess around, Richard didn't mess around, and we just had the greatest time. Now, have you guys seen the latest documentary on Richard? Yep. If you haven't, you should really check it out. It's very well done. There's a scene in there where he talks about him getting his Lifetime Achievement Award, American Music Awards with Dick Clark. And you know how you watch stuff when they do stuff for TV and they make it all dramatic? Because, Charles, bass player, Charles was on there and he was crying and And we were obviously in two different spaces in our experience in the Little Richard gig, because the way I remembered that, I had had one of my many embarrassing moments the night before in front of like 30,000 people. We do the song, let me show you this one. We're playing old time rock and roll. You guys ready, you know the song, right? Now the groove, we've been playing this song on this tour all year. I've been playing that the entire tour. Except this night, 30,000 people, he counts it off, I come in. Oh, stop. Oh, no. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the drummer's playing the wrong beat. I'm like, what? And he's like, oh, okay, now, let's try it again. I don't know, he's a joke. So he starts again. Now, let me tell you something, baby. I'm serious about my music. I'll sing you home. Now, he just said that to me in front of 30,000 people. I'm scared to death. So then he says, ladies and gentlemen, I think the drummer's been drinking. So we're going to start this off without him. So the band starts. The turmoil I'm going through, like just talking about it, it's still like, oh, that's horrible. So it's like, what do you do? I'm like, hey man, I ain't going down without a fight. So he starts, and he says, and I just stand up. So while I'm doing that, I'm like, I don't know, and Wayne comes over, and he points toward the kick drum, and he's telling me 2 and 4. So he wanted me to go, just take those over. How was I supposed to know that? So he embarrasses me, brings me out, whatever, and so after the show, he's threatened to fire me. He's embarrassed me publicly. Now, people don't know. They think it's a part of the show. So after the show, I'm in. Richard, I'm sorry, man. I'm so sorry. He's like, oh, baby, that's okay. That's okay? But you just... Psychologicals. So the next night, and excuse my French, but I'm pissed. The next night, American Music Awards, he's getting this award. Dick Clark comes in, and he's like, Richard, we just want you to be kind tonight. We know that we never gave you nothing, but we're giving it all to you tonight. Can you just be gracious? Please don't. I'm not making this up. This is Dick Clark. Richard, can you just be gracious, man? Can you? And Richard's, Now, we do sound check, because we play on the show. We do sound check, and he's still messing with me. He says, now we never play old time rock and roll in sound check. So after the thing the day before, he's like, let me hear this song. He does old time rock and roll, and I'm playing. He gets up and walks to the drum set, stands in front of it, and just stares at me like this. But a Little Richard stare is quite different. Because his eyes, he makes his... I'm like, man, what are you doing? Ain't trying to make out? So he does that. He's like, okay, I'm still a little nip, still pretty angry. So that night, I was saying when Charles was all crying, and I'm like, man, I didn't see, that wasn't the same night for me. When he was out there, because he went out there and he was, he did, it was beautiful, he teared up, and when he came backstage, he was sitting next to me. Yeah, all right. You got your award, huh? Cool. That's great, Rich. Sucker. I'm sorry. But that's how I felt. But now Richard, and truly, love him to no end. He treated me, all of us, but he treated me like a son, really like a son. I'll give you a son story. And I'm looking at my watch, because I want to take questions too. You guys got questions? No questions? Okay, we can go. So,
did you ever finish school?
well, I'm now at the University of Rick Estrin. Oh, okay. My mom would love you for that. I did not return to Jackson State University to finish that degree. I developed my own program called Drums and More that I've been teaching from K through 12 for the last 20 years around campus. And I will tell you this, it has been on my mind about finishing my degree because I was so close, but remember I told you I was a nerd. I think if I did go back to school, I wouldn't study music. I would study history. So that's not beyond the realm of possibility. It may be something, but my mother, every few months, when I do a talk or she sees me, you should just go. Just get it. But yes, I did not go back to Jackson State to finish that. Oddly enough, from that same university, the class that I was in, it's really weird because I went on to play with Richard. One of the guys went on to play with Maxwell. The guy played with Babyface, the Count Basie. It's just in that little school in Jackson, Mississippi, the music program was so phenomenal. And Russell Gunn left to play with Branford Marsalis. And it was just right there in that span of about maybe from like 90 to 95, just all these super talented musicians. But thank you for that question. Like, man. Great. Man, it's supposed to be no school question. No, but and education is paramount in my life because I'm a junkie for information and knowledge, and that's why I think I play the way I play, because I'm always, playing with Rick Estrin. I learned as much as I could about who he is and where he's come from and his vibe and all the things he's done. So it gave me all the information about how to play with him. And every night we play, I'm getting more information. So now, Little Richard, I was telling you he's an amazing man. Here's a story when I bought my first house, my ex-wife. We're on tour, come up to her, we're going through this whole thing. His company was called May's Teacup after his mom. So we go through, we're literally sitting at closing. Everything is fine, and then one of the people on the board said, we're not quite sure about this May's Teacup. We need to talk to someone there. Like, it's only Little Richard. So, and Larry's like, well, if we can't talk to someone, I don't think we can, put this loan through. So I call Richard when I'm sitting there. Richard, man, I'm here. I'm sorry to disturb you. The people want it. He's like, what? What's going on? I told you that racism is big in Mississippi. It's just big. And I was like, Richard, man, they just want to speak to you. Let me speak to her. Put me on speaker. I put him on speakerphone. My wife at the time, Faith, I look at her like, we're not getting this house. I put him on speakerphone. He was like, let me tell you all something. That young man has done everything, jumped through all the hoops, and he makes more money than all of y'all. I pay my people right on, and I pay them well. Stop doing it. He's just going on and on and on. They don't hear a word past It's Little Richard. And they hang up the phone. I'm like, oh God. And they were like, they look at each other. Damn, you got the house. So I go outside with my wife, and I call him up. Richard, oh boy, let me guess. You got the house. I was like, yeah, how you know? Oh, let me guess again. They were just happy to talk to me. I was like, what? And he's, well, baby, how much you owe them people? I was like, well, it's about $4,800. Hold on, Danny, I need you to go to Western Union and send Derrick $5,000 right now. That's a gift from me. And that's how Richard treated all of us. Birthdays, he remembered our birthdays, the children's birthdays. It's just tons of stuff like that. Just, killer opportunities. Now, it wasn't always so much fun because, again, I joined the band at 23, and I had to mature within the gig. I learned. He did great things for me. He knew I had a record company and production. Because at the same time, in 1995, that I joined his band, I also had a production partnership called Airtight Records, and we produced only the second major label rap group to be signed out of Mississippi. And so we were on TVT Records in New York. The label that record was on was the same record as, if you heard familiar with Ja Rule or Jay-Z. All of those guys were in that, so I go to New York to mix that work. So I'm doing all of this at the same time I'm joining the Richard's band. So the other thing about the thing with Richard, and I'm looking at my time because I want to make sure I give you the good stories, that I learned was psychologicals again. If you've ever heard of the term control freak, if you look it up in the dictionary, the whole page should have Little Richard on it saying, hey baby. We worked all the time. Now, the thing he was not big on was giving you advance information. Like, we knew guys that toured with Garth Brooks, all these people, and they had their itinerary for the year. They would know, hey, here we're gonna be staying here, and in January they could say, well, we're gonna be here on July 3rd, blah, blah, blah. Richard, we never knew any of that. You just get a phone call. Now, I would be at home having my entire weekend booked with gigs. Like, yeah, man, Thursday night, 10 p.m. Baby, you're leaving tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. to come to LA. For what? Oh, I'll let you know when you get here, but we're gonna go play some dates. Wait a minute, where we go? Richard, I got the whole weekend booked. Oh, no, baby, those little gigs don't mean nothing. I can't tell, let me tell you something. He's like, you know how much money I pay you? You know how long it would take you playing those little gigs to make what you make with me in one night? I said, well, Richard, that's not the, I'll see you tomorrow. So, of course, my name and reputation locally was not good. And I would have to book gigs with people like, okay, I'll book this gig with you, but the caveat is, I might not be able to make it at the last minute. So that too, in a psychological way from Richard, forced me to lean more into my own businesses and my own things, controlling my own destiny. But there too comes a time when the young man grows up and has to face down the iconic Little Richard. So I'm producing records, and we have to mix this record. And I said, Richard, I have to go to New York to mix this album. I can do it anytime I want in August. I just need to know when we're gonna be off. Oh baby, we're gonna play here in Phoenix, and after that, we're gonna be off for that week, and that'll be a great time for you to do it. Okay, you sure? Oh yeah, that's fine. So I do it, I take the advance, the whole thing. So this was months before we play Phoenix. I go to his room, knock on the door. Hey, Rich, I'm here to get my check, man. I gotta fly New York tomorrow. Oh, no, baby. We gotta play in Macon tomorrow. I was like, Richard, I'm going to New York tomorrow because you told me that this was, no. So I'm like, baby, you gotta make a decision. So now, I'm learning the psychologicals. I said, well, you know what, Richard? Because at the time, you know, we got 2 drummers. Because after Monkey left, Mark Holland was the other drummer that he came aboard, so we kept the 2 drummers. So I knew, oh man, he'll have a drummer. I was like, Richard, I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to mix this record, and I'm going to do so because you, as a man of God, gave me your word. And now you gotta know that Richard hung everything on the Lord. He carried his Bible, and even if he stepped out of it and did something, he's like, okay, let's pray, whatever. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. He's like, oh boy, that's what you're gonna do? Yes, sir, that's what I'm gonna do. I'll see you next week. He's like, oh, you think so? So there's this thing, and the only thing that saved me was the next week, the other drummer couldn't make the gig. So I show up, the other guys in the band are looking around like, what are you doing here, man? I came to play the gig, man. And he didn't say anything, and the guy, Kenny Walker, sax player, he pulled me to the side. He said, you know what? He said, I know that was hard. He said, but if you had not stood your ground, he would never have respected you, and he would have treated you like crap the rest of the time you were here. And so from there, the next week, I started getting phone calls. Hi baby, what you doing? I just want to let you know that next week, we're playing in Dallas, and we're playing in da-da-da. Now, I'm telling you, don't you tell nobody else. Now, there was another guitarist, Kelvin Holly, and Kelvin was a big session guy in Nashville, so he would tell Kelvin the same thing. Oh, let me back up. Part of that conversation was money, because he was like, this money? I was like, no, Richard, these people are paying me way more money to do this. He's like, they're paying you more money, but they're not going to pay you regularly. I don't know. I'm like, this is the first break. I said, but that's not it. I'm going to take you as a man of God. But anyway, so we moved past that, and he would do the same thing. Like, he would tell Kenny or tell somebody, and then we all figured it out, and then we would just compare notes. All right, he told me that we're going to be here. Which one did you get? All right, we got this one. And it sounds ridiculous, but we really got used to it. Then we befriended psychologicals. We befriended the secretary of his agent at William Morris. She thought I was cute. So they would send me in to talk to her. And I'm like, hey, well, I'm just wondering if we could get, you got the printout for our dates? Oh, yeah. Don't tell Dave, okay. And I go back, hey, man, look, I got the dates for 6 months. But I had to kind of, when I got married, I had to stop that. But sometimes the price is high. But I mean, it was a great time. Another really cool experience. You guys remember the closing ceremonies of the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta? I remember sitting in that. So here's the thing. I was a part of that. But the only reason I was a part of it was, again, the psychologicals. I'm the new kid in the band. And at this point, it's really like a family. And there's always this kind of sibling rivalry to always have Richard's attention. Honestly, I didn't care. And he knew I didn't care. So he would use me. I would get to do all kinds of cool stuff because he knew it pissed the other dudes off. So, closing ceremonies of the 1996 Olympics, there's a float coming out on the football field. There's C.J. Chenier, Wynton Marsalis, Little Richard. I'm on the float with Little Richard playing stand-up drum kit. We rehearsed this thing. Then the finale, the Paul Schaefer band, B.B. King, Al Green, Sheila E's in the band, Little Richard's gonna go up and play. So in rehearsal, we do a rehearsal, and I'm supposed to go to the right when we come off the float, and then Richard's gonna go to the left on the main stage. So Richard used to have his costumes made by this company in LA called Duran. $10,000 a jacket, handmade, beaded, and he had a red kind of jumpsuit thing made for me that was a few $1,000s or whatever. And I was like, yo, man, what is this? Again, psychologically, this is messing the other dudes in the band. They're like, what? He doing the thing, I got a new suit. So we do the thing. So Richard tells me, don't listen to those people, baby. Follow me. I was like, this is live TV. Worldwide. No tape delay. So we come off the float, and I'm still like, but they told me to go this way. He grabs my arm. Go watch the footage. We do Little Richard tunes. I'm coming on stage. Sheila E. sees me coming, tosses me a tambourine. I catch the tambourine, and when you watch it, there's like famous person, famous person, famous person. Who's that little guy in the red suit? And Richard, he was like, baby, if you want something, you just got to take it. Don't let people tell you, and don't, and someone asked me yesterday, it's like, all the stuff you do with Rick and all the stuff I know you didn't do that with Little Richard. I was like, no. That's why I learned half-ass. Because Richard's thing there was a story, did you know Jimi Hendrix used to be in Richard's band? Okay, if you didn't know, Jimi Hendrix used to play in Richard's band. I think he was with the Isley Brothers, and he was with Richard. Richard's brother, Robert Penniman, was Richard's manager, right-hand guy. And Richard always got the rap for firing Hendrix, but it wasn't Richard, it was his brother Robert. Because Richard said, I'm on the piano, and I'm taking my clothes off, and the people are screaming, and I thought they were screaming for me. They were screaming for Jimmy. Now, Richard was fine with it, but his brother Robert was not. So Richard says he just shows up at the next gig, where's Jimmy? And Robert was like, don't worry about it, you don't need him, keep playing. But historically that was great because it was then that Hendrix went to the UK and became the Jimi Hendrix we know. But the thing that was interesting about all of that is that Richard believed that if he turned around and saw you standing still, he would be not happy. And he would say, I have a 10-piece band, I have 10 superstars. And don't worry about eclipsing me because I'm a quasar. I think that's all the time we got. Wow, thank you. Wow, thank you all so much. There's like 2 minutes. Any other questions? Huh? Oh, his copyrights, yeah, his copyright contract was for like 0.5% royalty. But what people don't know is when Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog, Little Richard's songs were in that catalog. And Michael gave Richard a large percentage of that publishing back, and overnight he was a millionaire. And actually, part of that gift from Michael is what the largest part of his estate that he passed on to his family when he died. So, thank you guys so very much. Hope to see you guys Nightcaps, we're going to be on the pool deck at 3 o'clock. Thank you guys so much. This is so humbling. Thank you.